Welcome to You Have My Sword. If you're an arachnophobe, you're going to want to go ahead and skip the fuck out of this episode because we're talking about a roughly 100-foot tall spider born from the void, or so we think. Actually, what is her deal? Let's talk about it. Of course, before we get into the meat of today's episode, let's answer a listener question. So Amy writes in your opinion, what was the best and the worst casting in the Lord of the Rings films? Okay, so let's start with the best. I'm going to say Arwen. Although I really love Aragorn too, I think early 2000s Liv Tyler in her own right was an esoteric, ethereal beauty akin to how Tolkien described a lot of his leading elven ladies. Physically, I think she looked beyond perfection, and I'll say it again, but ethereal. It's the only way I can describe it. Aragorn honestly is a decisively better, well-rounded cast, but I'm so horny for early 2000s Liv Tyler. So let me live. Get it? Let me live. Liv Tyler. My bad. I am so sorry for doing that. Let's move on to the worst casting. Okay, so for my worst casting, I am going to say Denethor. So what do we know about Denethor, right? He's a dork steward who is against the return of the king. Boo. Hates his youngest son, like, so much. Will absolutely under no condition stop mourning his other son. Fails to hand authority over to Gandalf. Eats a small tomato. Fucking weird as hell in the movies. Gets his brain scrambled for using a Palantir, and Sauron touched his brain meat over Wi-Fi, fucking him up immensely. John Noble's portrayal of Denethor was a pretty far cry, in my opinion, from Tolkien's character, which can be fine so long as the deviation gives some entertainment. This is not a discredit to John Noble at all, as John Noble is a spectacular actor. He just went to waste a bit here, I think. I'd venture to say Denethor is meant to be a polarizing and compelling character, and I'm not sure if Denethor in the films did this or really told a story of any kind other than young son bad, tomato good. So let me ask you guys, did you guys enjoy any scene with Denethor in it? Did it add any context, or did it feel a bit like scenes you wish you could just get through to get back to the meat of Return of the King, which was an incredibly well-rounded titan of a film? So this is all fine and arguably not the actor's fault, as it's primarily the writing, right? But we are left wondering, kind of, as an audience, why is Denethor such a broken man? Noble's performance doesn't seem to hint at anything beneath the surface. It doesn't ever appear as if Denethor was ever anything more than what he is in Return of the King. You know, a disgruntled, mumbling, bitter weirdo. The character should have been more. It's believed that Tolkien's intention with Denethor and Boromir was to show how the greatest men succumb to the ring and Sauron, but also that these same men have redemptive features, right? Denethor cut a remarkable figure in the books, even to Peregrine, who has spent considerable time alongside Gandalf and Aragorn. Even to him, Denethor appeared mighty, if not clearly a bit clouded and offbeat, right? So in the books, we know for certain this clouded behavior, this weird dissociated behavior, is because Sauron peered into him via the Palantir. But there was no doubt at all that Denethor still had honor within him. So it sucks to see so little of this in Noble's performance. And I know this is like a sprawling, expansive film trilogy. It's hard to fit everything in. And I don't mind leaving things out as long as the stuff that is left in is fleshed out, right? Especially with an important character like Denethor. So it's a bummer because Denethor could have been a very good cautionary tale. They could have gone a little deeper with him, but they didn't. And also, who was on set the day they were like, hey, eat that tomato weird? Listen, I just want to talk. DM me. I want to know who was behind that production-wise. Okay, so I fully did not answer this question correctly. I clearly just needed to vent. But anyways, let's get in to this week's topic. Then the unlight of Ungoliant rose up even to the roots of the trees, and Melkor sprang upon the mound, and with his black spear he smote each tree to its core, wounded them deep, and their sap poured forth as if it were their blood, and was spilled upon the ground. But Ungoliant sucked it up, and going then from tree to tree, she set her black beak to their wounds till they were drained. Nobody on Arda is more metal than Ungoliant herself. Ungoliant is a major antagonist in the Middle-earth legendarium. Appearing in the Silmarillion, she was one of the most terrifying evil spirits in Arda, taking the form of a great spider, and she may as well be the personification of consumption, greed, and oblivion itself. It is thought that she may have been one of the Maiar, or a lesser spirit, whom Melkor corrupted long ago, but she is not listed among the known Ainur. It is also said that she came from the darkness above the skies of Arda, leading some to believe that she may be an incarnation of darkness or emptiness itself. What is known is that during the Age of the Trees, she had disowned Melkor and lived independently in Avathar. Now, I've mentioned Ungoliant many times across several episodes as she's had her weird spidery hands in a lot of tomfoolery across Arda. We'll recap it a bit and hopefully shed some new curious information about Ungoliant herself. So as many of us know from the last few episodes of Season 2, that after Melkor sowed discord among the Noldor and fled Valinor, he sought Ungoliant's aid in his attack on the two trees of Valinor, right? We remember this. She helped Melkor infiltrate Valinor by shrouding both herself and her ally in webs of pure darkness. Webs of Pure Darkness was my dead journal name. If you know what Dead Journal is, it's time to apply for AARP. I am so sorry to tell you this. Anyways, once within Valinor, Ungoliant drank the light from the two trees after Morgoth wounded them with his spear, which was known as the Darkening of Valinor. This thirsty bitch also drained dry the wells of Varda so that nothing remains of the light of the two lamps save what was captured in the Silmarils of Feanor. And we also learned that recently. How cool. So, after this terrible act, Ungoliant and Melkor fled to Middle-earth to escape justice at the hands of the Valar. Ungoliant and Melkor are on a real natural-born killer spree here, except Melkor is definitely played by Juliette Lewis and Ungoliant is Woody Harrelson. Don't ask me why this makes sense, it just does. Now, in order to gain Ungoliant's assistance, Melkor had promised to reward her, and after their flight from Valinor, the Dark Lord indeed gave her many gems of the Noldor, and she ate them, she consumed them, but she was insulted, as this was essentially costume jewelry to her, compared to drinking the literal light of the fucking world, right? So he withheld the Silmarils in his right hand, having desired them too greatly to allow the great spider to devour them, which, I mean, fair, right? As if she wasn't going to be like, hey, what's up with that hand behind your back? Smells like light back there, my guy. The enraged Ungoliant wrapped Melkor in her webs and poised to devour him as punishment for his perceived betrayal. So Ungoliant had grown far larger and stronger than before by absorbing the light of the two trees, and Melkor in turn had exhausted himself from his previous efforts. My man's completely played himself by partnering with one of the most mysterious and endlessly powerful beings in Arda, giving her every opportunity to become even more powerful, then deciding he was still the man enough to betray her with the lamest sleight of hand you've ever fucking seen. This is why men don't deserve rights. How dumb are you, dude? Anyways, indeed, the Gloomweaver, which is another sick fucking name for Ungoliant, would have killed Melkor had not his baby bitch cry of desperation been heard by his Balrogs, who took flight and saved their master. Is it my opinion that Ungoliant probably could have beat the bricks off Melkor and all the Balrogs if she wanted to? Yes. Did she have time? Not for these lame goofballs. No way. Annoyed by the Balrog's fiery whips, Ungoliant dipped out to the arid Gogoroth in Beleriand. There, she had many offspring, including Shelob, who we know and love. Well, maybe not love, but you know what I mean. It's complicated. Her offspring spread throughout the arid Gorgoroth and gave it a reputation as a place of absolute, unrelenting, abyssal horror. She also attempted to enter Doriath, the realm of Thingol, but was turned away by the power of the Maya Melian. Melian also being Luthien's mother from the tale of Beren and Luthien. Ungoliant herself eventually disappeared from history, but her final fate is not precisely known. It is said that she went into the forgotten south of the world shortly before the First Age, and some have said that she eventually let her ever-growing hunger overcome her and she devoured herself at last. I really, really like both of these working theories. A sexy, mysterious disappearance where she starts a new life in the south, somewhere tropical, terrorizing new locals on the beach, drinking sangria, or her hashtag girlbossing so hard she devours herself just to show men that she can. Both of these work for me. Now, here's something fun. I love the etymology for a lot of the naming conventions in Tolkien's work. So the etymology for Ungoliant is really dope. So in the form Ungoliant, the name is technically Sindarin, but is a direct loan from Quenya, Ungolante, which means dark spider, and the strictly Sindarin form being Deldutling, which means horror night spider, which is so sick, and that is absolutely a free black metal band name for you guys. So, in the Book of Lost Tales, Ungoliant's history is even more mysterious, if you can even believe it, than what is implied in the published edition of the Silmarillion. So here, even the Valar did not know of her origins, and she was portrayed as a primeval spirit of night and believed to be a creature bred of the darkness of the Void, the same void where Melkor was eventually banished and imprisoned to. Also, Melkor and his companions encounter Ungoliant in her lair, here known as Arvelin, by coincidence while fleeing from the Valar. Talk about a meet cute. Pretty much the same thing as bumping into a hot girl at the produce section of the local grocery, while you both reach for the same onion. You both really like onion rings, or in their case, devouring pure, unadulterated light of the realm. Melkor and Ungoliant are shown to be on much friendlier terms with each other than what is shown in later versions of the Silmarillion, as Melkor willingly offers the jewels that were stolen from the elves apart from the Silmarils, the theft of the Silmarils occurring before the darkening of Valinor in this version, for context. She is wounded after the poisoning of the Golden Tree by a lone elf named Darin, whose sword is poisoned by her blood. While Ungoliant is recovering from her wound, Melkor kills Darin and uses his sword to mortally wound the Silver Tree. After the darkening of Valinor, instead of fleeing with Melkor, Ungoliant immediately flees southwards towards her lair and successfully eludes the Valar. In an early sketch of the voyages of Arundel In the Lost Tales, Tolkien conspired to have Arendelle meet her in his travels, which Christopher Tolkien himself found to be very surprising. Their first sketch of the Silmarillion in 1926 intended to reboot the legendarium. Arendelle actually slew Ungoliant himself, which is crazy. That is so interesting that that was kind of like a working idea or theory where Arendelle would slay Ungoliant. That would make this man like one of the most powerful beings in Middle-earth. He is fucking busy doing shit. Saving the fucking realm all the time. Okay, so later, in the later Silmarillion, as documented in the stories titled Morgoth's Ring and War of the Jewels, Ungoliant is explicitly identified as one of Melkor's servants who abandoned him prior to settling in Avathar. She is also depicted as starving to the brink of death during her time in Avathar, cut off from the light of the Valar by her own webs of darkness. She is also shown to fear her master and hides desperately from Melkor when she first sees him approaching her lair. She initially refuses to emerge, believing Melkor's plans to murder her for deserting him, until he offers her an assortment of gems he had stolen from the Noldor. She then regains the strength needed to destroy the two trees, which she does alone while Melkor waits near Avathar. Now, in the Fall of Gondolin, it is stated that Ungoliant devours herself in hunger after she goes south in the First Age. Remember how I said everything about Ungoliant is like exceptionally metal? Here's some fun facts for you. Ungoliant has indeed been the subject of several heavy metal songs. Her conflict with Morgoth over the Silmaril was the subject of Blind Guardian's song Into the Storm from their 1998 album Nightfall in Middle-earth, which I have and play on vinyl often. It's a great album that tells so many great stories about Middle-earth. Fantasy metal is feel good as fuck, and I highly suggest treating yourself to some serotonin by listening. Now, Austrian black metal band Summoning had a song called Ungoliant on their 1995 album Minas Morgul. Now, on their 2006 album The Morrigan's Call, the Irish Celtic metal band Cruachan, I am pronouncing that incorrectly, it's Cruachan for context, but they also featured a song called Ungoliant, as well as one named after Shelob. Making a Middle-earth Spiders Only playlist fucking immediately. I love to see it. So we're going to transition from heavy metal fun facts to some science-based fun facts, which are my personal favorite. So, you know I love to butcher names. I won't stop. I'm only going to get progressively worse to troll everyone. But I'm going to butcher a ton of these scientific names, so bear with me. Anyways, so Ungoliant is the namesake of two species of spider. Nemesia ungoliant, a species of Nemesidae, which was described, or I think discovered rather, in 2007, and Ochirocera ungoliant, an Ochiroceridae species that was discovered in 2018, so relatively recently. How cool is that? I mean, both these spiders were discovered relatively recently. Which one is so sick that we're still discovering new species of anything, right? And two, that they're both named after a fictional spider from Tolkien's work. That is so dope. Anyways, I have butchered these pronunciations and I'm ready to be destroyed in the comments. Take me, I beg you. That sums up Ungoliant herself. I hope you learned something, and if you didn't, like I always say, you know where to send the hate mail by now. As always, visit YouHaveMySwordPodcast.com for links to all socials. And I want to, oh, you know what? I was going to plug the Patreon, but I actually have an update about the Patreon. So I am moving away from Patreon. I didn't necessarily love Patreon as a platform when I made the You Have My Sword Patreon in general. But, you know, every podcast operates on Patreon. So it just seemed like if I was going to have a podcast, I had to have a Patreon for it, right? Well, I don't love it. And so I have moved You Have My Sword over to Ko-fi, which is Ko-fi, Ko-fi. So the reason why I moved all support over to Ko-fi is I would rather, one, support a smaller company than Patreon. And two, Ko-fi gives more options for supporters to kind of pick what they want to donate, whether they want it to be a one-off donation, whether they want it to be reoccurring. If you want to come and just support by dropping $5 in and that's it, and not worry about $5 being taken out of your account every month, I like Ko-fi for that. If you want to set up something reoccurring, you can do that too. The choice is yours. If you just want to come by and support with $1 just to get access to the You Have My Sword Discord, then that's an option for you. I just felt weird like pigeonholing people with like monetary tiers that like they couldn't adjust. I want to be sensitive to everyone's income, and it just feels better to know that you guys can support in a way that benefits you as well, right? I want you guys to have more autonomy with the support. And thank you so much for the support so far in Discord, for the Venmos and the PayPals directly to me to support the show. I really appreciate that. And I hope that being over at Ko-fi will make supporting easier and better for you. So yeah, you can find You Have My Sword at Ko-fi, ko-fi.com/You Have My Sword. And you can find us there and support us there, which I truly appreciate. I really want to try and make some You Have My Sword merchandise. So currently that is where all support for the show is going, is to kind of up the quality of the podcast itself with equipment and to also make some sick merchandise. Okay, guys. Anyways, that's it. I could go on forever. And again, please feel free to write in with anything you think could be fun to read on the show. As you've likely learned by now, there's no rules. It's just chaos. I black out every time I record, so I hope this is a good one, y'all. Anyways, thank you guys, and as always, you have my sword.
Edgeworks Nebula.